Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For this episode, I just wanted to take the time to answer a question some people might have, including myself, that I've been lately looking into. Now, the question is, who were the original followers of Jesus? Now, some of you guys might ask, why does this even matter? Like, who cares? Well, considering the fact that there is probably over 2.63 billion followers of Christianity, it's probably a good idea to look into the background of the man that they claim is the Son of God, or in some instances, God Himself. Let's look at the very beginning. Jesus begins his objective roughly 27 to 30 AD. This is when he begins his public work. Now, mind you, there is no books, there is no letters. The only real source or transmission of information is word of mouth. And one of the ways he did it is that he taught out loud face to face. And from what we know, nothing of him survives, not a single document from his own hand. And this is basically just our starting point. Now, let's get into the 12 apostles. This is the inner circle. We have Peter, that's often considered the most prominent, a fisherman by trade. There's Andrew, Peter's brother, also a fisherman. James, son of Zebedee, part of Jesus' innermost trio. There's John, brother of James, also in the inner circle, traditionally linked to the Gospel of John. Philip I'm gonna butcher this, from Bethesda, known for practical, down-to-earth questions. Bartholomew, often identified with Nathaniel in some traditions. There's Matthew, a tax collector before following Jesus. Thomas, famously known as Doubting Thomas. James, son of Alphaeus, less is known about him. Thaddeus, also called Judas, not Iscariot in some lists. There's Simon the Zealot, associated with a politically radical group. Then there's Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed Jesus. Alright, so there you have it. Those are the 12 apostles. They traveled with him, they watched him, they listened directly, and they weren't just his fans, they were students in person, in real life. You can only imagine the type of preaching that these men were given. So now, after Jesus was gone, they started spreading the message themselves, still mostly oral, word of mouth. They're also the ones responsible for building the early communities, and those communities kept the stories alive. But here's the catch. Did any disciple write about Jesus during his lifetime? And the short answer to this question is no, they didn't. There is no confirmed writings from Jesus. Not a single source. No confirmed writing from any disciple. So even the men that were there in person next to Jesus, who received, I guess, preaching directly from him, have never actually written any or documented anything. Now, some later traditions claim that they did. Historically, we don't have any direct links to these apostles. There is no chain of transmission. All that was lost. So the next question is, when do we finally get the Gospels that were compiled into what we know today as the Bible? So, the Gospels appeared decades later. The earliest Gospel, Mark, was around 65 to 70 AD, and the latest was John, 90 to 100 AD. That's 30 to 70 years after Jesus. And none of them name their author inside. So, if you guys open up the Gospel of Matthew, or the Gospel of Mark, or any one of them, the author himself is not Mark, Luke, John, Matthew, none of these guys. We don't have the actual Gospels, or at least are claimed to be of these men. They're internally anonymous. So no one can actually say Matthew wrote this or John wrote this. There is no signature inside. Now the next question is, why do we call them Matthew, Mark, Luke, John? Like, where did these names actually come from? The names come from later church tradition. This is something that has been developed. So what's the bottom line? Jesus taught orally. There is no writings from him. There is no direct chain of transmission. Also, no verified disciple written account survives. So you can only imagine that these men followed Jesus throughout his time, and none of them actually wrote anything down. I remember playing a game back in middle school where you would whisper something to somebody on your left side, and it was a train of, I guess, oral transmission. And by the time the word got around, it was something completely different. So, according to my own personal understanding of, I guess, going by something that's orally transmitted, we can't take that as something to be trusted, at least from my own personal perspective. So, what I'm about to say next is different. This is not historical evidence, this is my own personal perspective. What I believe is that Jesus was nothing more than a man, which we all know, in fact, right? He was just a man. He never claimed to be anything more than that. But it seemed like he just spoke the word of God. He never made any claims that he was God. Anything that goes against the monotheistic faith. Yeah, just from looking from that perspective, I just find it hard to believe that Jesus is God, because anyone who says Jesus is God is basically saying that Jesus, who is a Jewish man who spoke Aramaic, I can't say it, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. And I think that is complete blasphemy, and it goes against the Old Testament and the first law of Moses. Hear, O Israel, your Lord is one, right? Because once you say Jesus is, God, you're basically breaking that law. You're saying that Jesus is a part of, or somebody who's derived from the Almighty, and that's no longer monotheistic. That is a polytheistic perspective. So yeah, so that's just my own personal perspective. Thanks for listening. I probably butchered a lot of things. You guys gotta bear with me. This is my first time doing something like this. I plan on doing more content, but I'm actually more of a I'm someone who uses my brain. I like chess games. Not chess itself, but I do enjoy puzzles. Just application of knowledge in a sense. And yeah, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. Drop a comment or reach out. And thanks for listening.